It was a new dawn of peace and security, a new dawn that marked the end of decades of terror, mayhem and insecurity.
Nobody should think that what is happening today, or what has been happening in the last few days, is a mere change of guards. This is not a mere change of guards. I think this is a fundamental change in the politics of our country. Because in Africa we have seen so much change that change has become meaningless. It's no longer change but mere turmoil. This group getting rid of that group and that group doing it worse than the group it got rid of. Now, please do not count us in that category of people. The national resistance movement, I think, is a clear-headed movement with clear objectives and with good membership. Of course, we will have some burdens even among us because we are part and parcel of the society of Uganda as it is. And in that way, you may not be able to completely guard against infiltration by the wrong elements. But since it is the deliberate policy of our movement to ensure that we uplift the quality of the politics of our country, I think it makes a very big difference from the situation in which we were, where the very people involved were they themselves encouraging evil instead of trying to combat evil. I think this is a slightly different situation.
It was difficult to believe that after fighting for this long, we were now the ones in charge. So the swearing in, the things that followed were, for some time, you didn't believe that really the war was coming to an end. We knew that we still had to clear the rest of the country, but the fact that we are now the government took a few weeks to sink in.
It was a new political administrative setup that was received with a lot of enthusiasm from the Ugandan population. A system that was spearheaded by patriotic Ugandans who had sacrificed their careers to restore sanity in the country.
The Tumwines, who are big generals now, he could have remained a teacher. He had things to do. He was qualified. He was a graduate. If you look at Dr. Besigye, he had even a job in Mombasa General Hospital, although it was not in Uganda, but he had a job there. He willingly and personally left his job to come and help in the bush. So it's not an issue of people had nothing to do, because those who joined, who started the first 27, we are in the army or in politics, and they had their own means. And those whom we went into the bush and mobilized had their homes there, they had their gardens there, they had their animals there, they were farmers who were able to look after themselves without NRA, NRM. But then, because there was something, a conviction that something was wrong with Uganda and it needed to be fixed.
Prior to this, Uganda had gone through 2 decades of political, social and economic instability. From the unresolved problems of post-independence politics, Uganda lurched into the disastrous military dictatorship of Idi Amin in 1971, which only worsened the situation in the country. State-inspired terror, lawlessness, breakdown of state institutions, culminating into the total collapse of the economy. With exit of Idi Amin in 1979, the population was hopeful that the time and opportunity had come to right the historical wrongs in the country. Ugandans were promised a government of national unity, but this was not to be. The political class shamelessly reverted to the old politics of sectarianism. This dashed the hopes and expectations of the people of Uganda. The country found itself lurching towards the 1980 elections without first resolving the issues which had led to the instability in the past. The election process went ahead amidst the confusion and political intrigues of the politicians, each determined to take power by all means, including manipulating the results.
The way the military commission chairperson called Paul Mwanga behaved, you know, when he said that the result must not be declared by the electoral commission, but by after he has approved. That was the surest way. And secondly, those of us who participated know what happened. For example, my own constituency, what was called Bushenyi East. The day of the election, ours was postponed. You know, and we had it the following day when everybody, all the machinery was in place. I mean, you could go to a place and find there were 300 more votes than the voters on the register, and so on and so forth.
Indeed, as feared, the 1980 elections were stolen in favor of the Uganda People's Congress, led by Milton Obote, amidst disenchantment of the other political parties and the population at large.
UPC has got 145. UPC took Manam Bhutan. DP has got 4,000.
The Democratic Party, which many believed to have won the election, remained indecisive and instead chose to go ahead with the charade as an opposition party, much to the disappointment of its supporters.
Supporters like Serumaga, who was outside the country, Kaira, and we had the supporters like Haji Amin Mutiaba and others. So we decided that wing, what they call my wing, decided to go militaristic. And the people who said for us we are for peaceful coexistence, we did not interfere with them, we left them, they went to parliament.
Yoweri Kaguta Museveni was among the participants in these elections. But unlike the rest, he promised to lead a protracted people's struggle if the elections were stolen.
When we were campaigning as UPM, we made it very public that if elections are rigged, we definitely will not take it. We shall go to the bush. But I think, fortunately, the UPC government never took us seriously. They thought it was just a brav by these young fellows. But eventually the last decision was taken not as UPM, but by a few individuals, because there was a fear of leakage. And then the foreign soldiers who were in the army were also very, very uncomfortable. They were being discriminated against, they were being locked up. So there was a situation, how do we handle the situation? And Obote was not prepared to accommodate everybody. Yeah. I'm sure if Obote, for example, after the election had said, let's form a government of national unity, I think we would have found it difficult to go to the bush.
Sure?
I'm sure. It would have been difficult. Because this Obote had said, okay, I have stolen, but you can share. But because our promise we made, these young fellows who were in the army and being mistreated, and then UPC behaving like a rogue, you know, people beating up, how did you vote, blah, 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 don't get salt, don't get this. So, in a sense, the situation forced us to continue what we wanted.
The declaration that, yes, Ugandans have decided
to go to the bush and to fight the regime and let the world know that it is today that we have started was 6th February of Kabamba.
For the next 5 years, the NRA waged a people's struggle in what came to be known as the Royal Triangle. As a protracted people's struggle, the population was slowly mobilized into the movement, gradually building up capacity to wage war against Milton Obote's forces.
All these recruits, all these soldiers you see here, were not soldiers before. They were peasants or sons of peasants, and we have been mobilizing among the peasantry mainly. But also we have been organizing among other strata, like for instance the intellectuals from the towns, and also in the working class, and also the big businessmen.
And the good story I like telling about is this old man in my area whom we went to visit and found in a banana plantation, looking after his banana plantation, and we told him, we greeted him and we said, we are the Bahekera, we are the guerrillas you have had who want to remove this government and put a people's government. And he said, what? My children, my children, go away. There's a government in Kwatakochi. What does government have to do with me? I see government once every year. When they come for their poor tax, I pay their tax, they go away, I go back in my banana plantation, I eat my matoke, I make my beer. What does government have to do with me? And he said, you go, you go. Then we said, Mzee, that's the point. We would like to tell you that actually you should be part of government. He said, how do I become part of government? We say, you would like to form committees where you are the ones who will influence your situation, your area, and decide for your area. He said, how? He said, please allow us a small chance to teach you or to explain to you. He said, okay, tell me how I will be part of government. And that was the starting point. And he became one of our committed members of the committees. So we started with secret committees until we were able to control some area and formed open committees to organize the people, to help in intelligence, to help us with some food. And the people had given us their children, so they were part and parcel with us.
Alongside the fighting, the NRA developed and introduced a new system of administration based on local resistance councils in which the population participated in running their own affairs and the dispensation of justice.
Resistance councils in the village, Muruka, Gombora. That's how far we needed to go.
Gradually, the gallant NRA fighters won over the population and liberated more territory, extending their national reach, and eventually captured the capital Kampala and expulsion of the forces of the Okello junta on January 26, 1986, marking the genesis of the fundamental change Ugandans had hungered for.
it's quite easy for us to really get out of our problems if only we have a good team. And I am struggling very hard to evolve a team which is both broad-based and efficient. Because sometimes
armed with the legal mandate and the instruments of power, the NRA-NRM government firmly took charge of running the country.
The fact that I have made very many efforts.
But the new government was faced with addressing a multitude of challenges accumulated over the decades.
In the effort to try to restore the economy, especially.
Dealing with the remnants of the defeated ex-government soldiers and securing the fragile peace in the rest of the country was key.
In areas, for example, of northern Uganda, some people found it easy to misguide the population, to tell them this is an occupation force, they are going to revenge, and so on. And no wonder you had this resurgence of counter-revolutionary activities of several rebel groups, mainly thriving on that sectarian, the sectarian ideology which was characteristic of the old order. The message, for example, in Acholi and in Elango was that these people are Bantu, they are coming to revenge on Luos, and for some time it caused that imbalance and the insurgencies.
Actually, they had been thrown out, and that feeling was very strong. That this was not helped by the fact that other groups here which went into there, like FEDEM, whatnot, actually applied sometimes in the wrong techniques and tactics against some former soldiers. So the thing blew up.
The mindset of the population at that time in the north was that NRA was moving for a war of extermination. Genuinely, many people believed that there were going to be revenge and there was going to be extermination of the Acholi people, the Langi people, as a people, as a society. So one, there are those who were in the military who formed UPDA. It was a professional group. They had leaders who were politicians, they had military officers. Most of them had been in UNLA.
The first special forces that Uganda had was predominantly from Teso. About 90% of them were from Teso. So when the government fell in 1986, they believed they had sufficient guns and sufficient manpower to take on the government. And in doing that, they began to reorganize themselves with those guns. Of course, there were guns that went to the tune of about 1,000 plus, which were constituting a bigger majority of special forces. Now, the overall command of special forces was called Itilerego. And then he had his junior commanders and senior commanders who were mostly from Teso. And then the external groups like Pitotai, the Anyotis, were all from Teso, began encouraging them that they will get external support. So they began forming up into a formidable rebellious force.
Some of those groupings were expected because like all the groups in which were formed were from the history of our country. Because some were looking at it at a tribal basis, some were looking at it from their region, some were looking at it from their political backgrounds. And we expected them. And we, as said, as long as we are cohesive, as long as we are uniting all Ugandans, even these who are in opposition or who are rebels, will finally, it was his philosophy, it's a philosophy to finally win them over.
Apart, it's still a luxuriant and
it was also essential and necessary to find quick fixes of reviving the economy that had completely collapsed due to decades of instability and mismanagement.
When NRM came in 1986, the economy was zero. no goods in stores, no foreign exchange, no fuel. The companies are mostly parastatals. They're producing maybe less than 5% capacity and allocating whatever little was produced to those who were lucky to get cheats. So it was a non-economy for all practical purposes. There was nothing in the country, nothing in the stores. The infrastructure totally impossible. Going from Kampala to Kawaris take us 2 days, full days. We'd sleep in Masaka on the way back, and the back would be gone because the holes and the roads were so enormous.
When we arrived here in 1986, first of all, when you look at currencies alone, they were having to carry a big bunch of notes for purpose of making a single foreign purchase. Most items were brought in from neighboring Kenya. You name anything, they used to come from Kenya. You would not think about a bread, you would not think about milk, you would not think about any simple thing that you talk about, whether a box of matches and the rest of it. So most of these things used to come from Kenya. And the tax collection was at its lowest. It was about, I think, 50 billion at the material time. And that was extremely low when you consider the budget to run a nation.
It was equally crucial to sort out the chronic sectarian politics that was deep-rooted within the population, as well as introducing genuine grassroots participatory democracy if the NRM was to continue cementing its political agenda without interruption and gain acceptance from the population.
For example, the bigger part where, where we had not liberated the politics of UPC and, of course, with their sectarian ideology was deep in the minds of the people. If you went to some parts of Western Uganda, people were seeing politics from the angle of religious and ethnic sectarianism. And this could be seen when we were establishing the early committees, resistance councils and committees. You would find Catholics voting their fellow Catholic, Protestants voting their fellow Protestant.
While the NRM had saved the country from a terrible political situation, it found the health sector in a very appalling and dire situation, barely able to keep the population alive.
Really, the health sector was in shambles. The hospitals were not hospitals, but centers where many people would go to get disease from instead of being cured because of infections in hospitals. Children were dying at a very, very high rate. Infant mortality was very, very high, over 120 per 1,000 live births, and other health indices were very, very, very high.
But amidst this appalling health situation, the young NRM government found itself confronted by a new and deadly pandemic that was silently ravaging the country, HIV/AIDS.
There is a new disease, it's causing a big problem, we must deal with it.
Rugunda makes an SOS, he says no. We have a problem. People are dying. We need help.
If the leadership is struggling against these wrongs, it cannot go to this.
Equally urgent was the need to win over international acceptance and legitimacy.
6 years working with you, building up from a very small nucleus to what you are now. You can't repeat.
But I remember the first time I went to Britain officially. I went and talked to them in foreign affairs, of course, intelligence as usual. They said, these chaps may have some brains in there.
Some sense.
Some sense. They don't have tails. That's what they said.
Undoubtedly, the problems facing the new government were numerous and multifaceted. Therefore, finding solutions and means of how to address them occupied the minds of the new government. Indeed, if the new government was to get on top of the situation, The only magic bullet was implementation of the 10-point program.
Uganda Warehouse Receipt System Authority warmly congratulates His Excellency the President of the Republic of Uganda, members of the Cabinet, members of Parliament, officers and men of the Armed Forces, Uganda Warehouse Receipt System Authority Board of Directors, Trade, Industry and Cooperatives Fraternity and the people of Uganda on the 35th NRM Liberation Day. Uganda Warehouse Receipt System Authority is committed to promoting and regulating the warehouse receipt system to enable Ugandan producers and traders of agro-commodities have access to affordable credit by using their commodities as collateral.
A teeming and bustling downtown Kampala. A nation on the move under the NRM leadership government. A reflection of a vibrant economy that has maintained a 7.2% average steady growth since 1986. Ugandans are vigorously participating in the economy, running their businesses and enterprises without